What's up guys, Blade Master here. You're watching the Wolf of Dreams Total War channel, and this is going to be the top 10 list, in my opinion, of cheap melee infantry or sword units that you can get in Total War Rome 2. Of course, this is not a definitive list, and this is just my personal opinion. And if your playstyles are different from mine, or if your personal opinion could be anything else, then obviously these rankings would be different. So the only criteria that I've selected, or criterion that I've selected for making this list, is that the units have to be sword infantry, and they need to be within 0 to 500 talents in cost. So this is across all factions, and I've collected the top 10 infantry based on that. So without further ado, let's get on to the 10th best unit, and hope you guys have fun. At number 10 are the Iberian swordsmen units. Now, these are units that are only available to Lusitani, Carthage and Arvasi factions, and they cost a total of 320 talents. They do have very high melee defense at 60, however their morale at 40 is very low, and so is their armor, which is only at 15. Besides that, they've got basic stats for a low tier unit. Now, they do have increased missile range and javelin ammo, which increases their versatility. And you will notice that throughout this video I will rank units based on 3 criteria: versatility, strength and cost effectiveness. In terms of versatility, Iberian swords get only a 3 on 5, and that's because they are very susceptible to both archer fire and cavalry charges, but they do get increased versatility because they can shoot a bunch of javelins before they have to get into melee. In terms of strength, they only get a 2 on 5, and that's because they don't last versus any other infantry unit except for maybe like spear or low tier spears. And finally, in terms of cost effectiveness, they get an average 3 on 5, and that's because they do have severe weaknesses, but you can find a use for them, and at 320 cost it's pretty easy to get a couple of kills with them, and thus make them cost effective. At number 9, the fine Italian swordsmen. They have very high armor and pretty decent health. They are available only to 2 factions though, Epirus and Carthage, and they are mercenary units for both of them. They cost a total of 400 talents, so they are on the higher tier of or higher end of low tier melee infantry. Besides their armor, they have pretty basic stats overall, so you do get a pretty decent overall unit for the cost. Now, in terms of versatility, they do get a higher 4 on 5, and that's because their increased armor and decent health make them more resistant to cav charges and arrow fire. And since they have decent melee defense at 45, that means that they also last for a little longer against enemy melee infantry. In terms of strength though, they only get a 3 on 5, and that's because their melee attack at 34 isn't too strong, so you won't get a bunch of kills very quickly with them. In terms of cost effectiveness, they get an average 3 on 5 as well, and that's because at 400 it's going to be slightly tougher for you to justify their price, but you definitely can find uses for them, especially when you engage them against enemy spear units, and the fact that they can hold out for a bit longer makes them pretty effective units too. Number 8 belongs to the Galatian swordsmen from the Egypt faction, and these guys cost a whopping 470 talents, which makes them pretty expensive for a low tier in melee infantry unit. But for that, you get a unit with pretty decent staying power. Their melee defense at 52 is very good, but combined with their high health at 50 and higher armor than Iberian swordsmen at 35 makes them units that can last for a long time. And their morale at 50 also means that they won't rout very quickly. You have to watch out for enemy archer fire and cav charges with them, but besides that, they can put a good deal of hurt against even elite tier spear units, and if you can flank or rear charge enemy sword units, then these guys will do a bunch of damage. I have uploaded a replay earlier about Galatian swordsmen getting about 220 kills, and I'll put an annotation up on the screen right about now. So in terms of the 3 criteria, in terms of versatility, Galatian swords get only a 3 on 5, and that's because, like I said, their low armor means that they are very susceptible to both archer fire and cavalry charges. In terms of strength though, they get a good 4 on 5, so very above average strength, and you can kill off enemy spear units very quickly, and that's what these guys are best used for. In terms of cost effectiveness though, they do get an average 3 on 5, and that's because of their higher cost at 470, which makes them a bit tougher for you to get a good number of kills from them. Number 7 belongs to the human glass cannon, aka the FALXMEN. Now these units cost only 320 talents, and they are available to only a couple of factions, Jedi and THRACIAN Kingdom. Now for 320 talents you get an incredible charge bonus of 48 with them, incredible weapon damage at 39, of which a whopping 14 is armor piercing, and their melee attack at 38 is very good too. But why are they all the way down at 7? Well, their melee defense is terrible, 11, and their armor is even worse at 10. And finally, their morale is at 40, which makes them very susceptible to routing too. So, like I said, human glass cannon, if they get charged at by cavalry, they'll get completely crushed. If they get shot at by archers or slingers, they'll get destroyed. But they are very good against both cavalry and infantry, as long as you can get them in a supporting role. So in that sense, they get a 2 on 5 in versatility. You get one each, one for being very supportive in cav, and one for being very supportive in infantry engagements too. In terms of strength, a whole 5 on 5. These guys are very strong as long as you can get them into correct positions, such as flank or rear charges against enemy infantry, and a supporting role in cavalry engagements. In terms of cost effectiveness though, they get a total of 4 on 5, so above average cost effectiveness, and that's because for 320 talents you can easily get from 50 to 120 kills easily with these guys. 50 kills can be a total of 50 just from cav too. So yeah, very good units, but you have to be afraid of archers and cavalry with them. Number 6 goes to one of my favorite and one of the most underrated low tier units, the Celtic Warriors. Now these units are available to a whole bunch of factions, Arverni, Ardii, Boii, Carthage, Nervii, Pontus, and Tillus. So a whole bunch of factions, and they are pretty cheap at 350. For that you get a unit which has decent armor. They have, I believe, 45 armor. Their health is very strong, so the highest health in class at 55, and their melee defense at 50 is very good too. Now where they do suffer is their melee attack, so these are units that won't deal a whole bunch of damage very quickly, but they are units that can be pretty versatile in that you can use them as a frontline unit pretty effectively. They can absorb archer fire and slinger fire with their incredibly large shields. And with 45 armor and 55 health, they are not as susceptible to cav charges as many other low tier melee infantry that there are in this list. So in terms of versatility, they get a 3 on 5, and that's because they can be pretty useful in a multitude of functions. Frontline unit, like I said, to absorb archer fire. They can be used with RDI pretty effectively. You can put your very strong hoplites into phalanx, and then just use these guys as a second line, and just start charging the enemy infantry from the same directions as your hoplites, and just use them to bog down enemy infantry and slowly but steadily get kills. And their high melee defense and their high health also help them in this factor. They'll just take a whole lot of time to die, which is always a very good trait in low tier units. In terms of strength, they get an average 3 out of 5, and that's because while they have pretty low melee attack, their weapon damage at 40 is quite strong. So if you can get them into a flank or rear charge, they could do pretty decently, and their charge bonus at 25 is also very good too. So in terms of cost effectiveness, finally they get a very good 4 on 5. 4 on 5 is very strong for these units, and that's because they're very good against at absorbing slinger and archer fire. For 350 cost, it's going to be very hard for you to not find a good use for these units. Number 5, another personal favorite of mine, the Round Shield Swordsmen for the Suebi faction. Now these guys cost a total of 450 talents, so again on the higher end of the low tier units, but you get a whole lot with them. Weapon damage at 34 is okay, melee attack at 40 is very strong, health at 55 is the highest in class. Their armor does lack at 40, but compared to the rest of the units in the SWORD roster, that's quite high for a sword unit, especially a sword unit that costs so less. Charge bonus at 24 is very good. Their morale slightly lacks at 45. Now, there's a little bit of history with these units. Although they were released very recently, when they were released, they had Headhunt, which made them incredibly potent units. And I was actually going to put these guys up at the number 1 spot initially, but then when I just saw Emperor's Edition and took a look at them, I realized that Headhunt has been removed for these guys, which is quite the shame. So that does reduce their strength a little bit, but in terms of versatility, they get a 3-on-5, which is average, and it is, that's not bad for a one-trick pony in quotes, such as the SWORD faction. These guys can be pretty deadly against enemy spear units, very, very good against them. Against enemy sword units, they will do a whole bunch of damage very quickly because of their high melee damage or melee attack and weapon damage, and their high charge bonus. And if you pair it up with Ariovistus and Pride, these guys are basically unstoppable. So in terms of versatility, 3-on-5. In terms of strength, 4-on-5. That's because their high charge bonus, their high weapon damage, and their high melee attack, combined with their high health, makes them pretty formidable opponents against any unit that's not elite tier. And finally, for cost effectiveness, 4-on-5 for a unit that costs 450 talents. So yeah, these guys can get 100 odd kills very easily, and especially if you pair it up with the right SWORD general abilities, these guys can be incredibly potent units. At number 4, the deadly LUSITANI SWORDSWOMEN. Now, they are obviously only available to the LUSITANI faction, but they cost very little at 360 talents, and for that you get a whole bunch of different very good melee stats. Their morale at 55 is excellent. Their armor, however, is lacking at 15, as with all the other LUSITANI units. But for that, you get very high melee defense at 55, incredible melee attack at 40. Weapon damage is alright at 35, and their charge bonus is pretty low though. Now, why are they all the way up there? Because they have this very unique function called Frenzy Charge, which increases your charge bonus, your acceleration, and I believe weapon damage too. I'm not sure, but that all doesn't really matter. What's the real gem that's involved in Frenzy Charge is that the unit that has it gets unbreakable morale for the period that the ability is active. So LUSITANI SWORDSWOMEN, once they get down to like 20 or 30 odd units, all you need to do is pop Frenzy Charge, and they will just keep staying there until the last one of them is dead. So that's why they're all the way up at the top. And besides that, they, for 360 talents, it's very easy to get full cost effectiveness for them. So in terms of versatility, they get 3-on-5. They are slightly better than the Iberian swords in terms of dealing with enemy infantry. Against enemy spear infantry, they can just last for a whole lot of time. And against very good hoplites like Spartan hoplites, they can hold them out for almost the entirety of the battle. So that's because of their high base morale, which means that they'll last for a long time, and at a melee damage of 40 means that they'd also get a couple of kills too. Strength is at 4-on-5, and that's because of the melee damage, melee attack, weapon damage, and because of the fact that they have Frenzy Charge, they can keep killing until they're down to the last woman. And then finally, their cost effectiveness is all the way up at 5-on-5, and they have the same trait as the Iberian swords, in that they can shoot their javelins from at an extended range. They have lots of ammo, and because of their special ability and the fact that they have pretty decent stats overall, it's quite hard to go wrong with these women. So that's why they get a 5-on-5 in terms of cost effectiveness. Now, some of you might be wondering, where are the Roman units, since this is a melee infantry ranking, and fear not, number 3 goes to the HASTAD. These units cost 350 and are obviously only available to Rome, and they are incredibly strong and versatile units for the cost. They have pretty decent stats overall, nothing really sticks out, but they do have a very useful ability in that they can form into an attacking testudo. And what that ability does is it basically makes them impervious to enemy archer and slinger fire. Now, on top of that, they do have very good armor at 60, and very decent health at 52. So this means that they are extra resistant to archer fire and cavalry charges, and that makes them perfect as a front line unit like they were used historically. Besides that, their melee attack at 36 and their weapon damage at 35 are both decent but nothing great, and their charge bonus at 12 means that they won't get a bunch of kills very early on. But in terms of versatility, 5 on 5, they can be used as a frontline unit incredibly effectively. They can also be very good when dealing with enemy hoplites and spear units, no matter what tier they are. And finally, they are very good at flank charging or rear charging enemy melee infantry. In terms of strength, they get a 3 on 5, and that's because their melee attack and weapon damage aren't great. And combine that with the fact that they have only a 12 charge bonus, it means that they won't be dealing a whole bunch of kills very soon. Cost effectiveness at a 4 on 5. Their cost at 350 means that they're very cheap. If you can use attacking testudo effectively, they can be very effective. But the fact of the matter is, there are much better units in the Roman roster that you can use that also have the same abilities that these guys have. But compared to other cheap melee infantry across all the other factions, they can be very cost effective. So very easy to see around 50 to 80 kills with these guys, which is very good for a unit that costs so less. Up next at number 2 are some really powerful units, the Thracian warriors. These are units that cost 420, and they are available only to Tilis and the Odrysian Kingdom factions. Now, Thracian warriors are really specialized units. Their melee attack is highest at 46 among all units, all cheap units. Weapon damage is highest at 45, which includes a whopping 15 armor piercing damage. Charge bonus is incredibly high, the second highest at 36, second only to FALXMEN, by the way. But again, just like FALXMEN, where they lack is their melee defense and their armor, which is at 12 and 30 respectively. Their health is decent at 50, although their base morale is quite low at 40. So again, they are just a very upgraded version of FALXMEN, and that means that they are also much less susceptible to cav charges, although they are still very susceptible to archer fire. Now, the reason I say that they are less susceptible to cav charges is because while they will lose a lot of men to charge, they will also deal a bunch of damage because of their really high weapon damage and melee attack. The best way to use this unit is, one, you can use them on the cav flanks and they will slaughter enemy cavalry. You can use them against elite spear units frontally and they will destroy them in a couple of minutes. Don't use them frontally against enemy mid-tier or elite tier units. You don't want to use them only because that's not the best way to use them. You want to flank charge them or you want to rear charge them onto elite or MVP units, like Avocardies and stuff like that. And they will deal a whole bunch of damage in that regard. So yeah, flank charge or rear charge them, it's quite hard to go wrong with them. It's very easy to get over 100 kills with them also, which is why they're all the way up at the top. Now the reason they're at number 2 is because they don't last very long. The fact that they lose a lot of men to cav charges and the fact that they lose a lot of men to either slinger or archer fire means that their versatility is hurt quite a bit. That's made up for the fact that they are very strong glass cannons. But at the end of the day, I don't think glass cannon warrants the top spot in my top 10 list. So that's why they're at number 2. In terms of versatility, 4 on 5, they're excellent against spears, swords, cavalry. But the only thing that hurts them is the fact that they are very susceptible to skirmishers. Strength, 5 on 5, of course, they're the strongest cheap infantry that you can get. Their high melee attack and high weapon damage, prove that. Cost effectiveness is at 5 on 5. It's very hard to go wrong with these guys. Just don't keep them up at the forefront of your infantry line, otherwise they'll get slaughtered by enemy skirmishers. And besides that, you're good to go. Finally, up next at number 1. I think you guys might have guessed this. It's the Axe Warrior unit. And these are units that are only available to 3 factions: RDI, Boii, and Gedai. And they make, instantly by adding them to their rosters, they've made them very powerful factions. They cost a total of 470 talents, and they're the most versatile unit that you can get for such a cheap price. At a glance, they don't look too great. Their melee attack at 35 isn't the greatest. Their weapon damage at 26 is quite low, in fact. Charge bonus at 20 is quite decent, but where they excel is the fact that they can last forever. 50 melee defense combined with the highest in-class armor at 65, highest in-class health at 55, and base morale, which is at 55, again tied at the highest, makes them a very strong and sturdy unit. That's one of the real benefits of having a cheap unit, is the fact that if they can be sturdy, it helps you out so much more. And another note is that their weapon damage, while it's only at 26, 10 of that is armor piercing. So very high armor piercing damage for these guys, which makes them a bigger threat to armored units such as legionaries or any mid-tier sword unit, except for like Lusitani swords or something like that. So for most factions, especially with the armor buff, this makes axe wielding units much stronger and much more important to use. For a long time, axe warriors were the go-to unit if you brought Boyai. I remember many top level players just bringing a line of 4 axe warriors, backing them up with like 4 or 5 veteran spears, stuff like that, and they would be very, very strong armies to bring. So melee attack at 35 means that they won't do too well, although they will be able to kill off units very quickly if you can get them into a rear charge or a flank charge, and that's only because of their high armor piercing weapon damage. Now, despite the fact that their melee attack is low, a big case can be made for them being able to last for such a long time, that since they last such a long time, you have enough time to bring your cavalry to mount a hammer and anvil charge, and these are perfect units to use for that purpose. Armor at 65 means that they are very strong against archers, and their high health and armor and melee defense all combined makes them the most resistant to cav charges compared to other cheap melee infantry. So in terms of versatility, 5 on 5, very good against basically any unit. Just don't put them up against elite tier sword units, and you should be fine. Strength is at 4 on 5. Again, they can't be as strong as Thracian warriors, but they make up for the fact that they have lower strength by their increased staying power. Cost effectiveness, 5 on 5. It is very easy to get a lot of kills with these units, and more importantly, it's very easy to have these units staying alive at the end of the game, which is a much more important trait for them, and that's a result of their high base morale and high health. So anyways guys, that wraps up the top 10 infantry units. I would love your comments or suggestions or criticisms, and whom do you guys think are the best top 10 cheap units? Let me know. Anyways, I'll be coming up with a top 10 sword infantry and top 10 archers and stuff like that later, so stay tuned for some more action. Anyways guys, this is Blade Master. Hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more. Peace.